For Escape from Tarkov, I made a video on labs navigation and labs PvP, but now I'm finally going to be talking about looting labs. While the map is obviously very high risk, it can also be very high reward, but there's definitely a lot to be learned before diving into it. A few important things to note before we get started. Prior to watching this video, I highly suggest watching both my labs navigation and my labs PvP guides. All my info in this video assumes that you have the map itself memorized, and I also never suggest looting until the PvP is seized. Also, the current iteration of dynamic loot containers means that location and spawn frequency of weapon crates, sports bags, etc. will never be certain. That being said, expect me to give many approximations when it comes to container locations. I also know that many people are probably watching this video in hopes to learn the various hideout item spawns, such as the GPSA. So just know that whenever I call out a valuable or tech spawn, these hideout items can potentially spawn there. You'll need 2 keys for the map, but they're pretty cheap: weapon testing and manager's office. While I will brush over the colored keycard rooms, they aren't necessary to make significant money on the map. Because I've covered this map extensively in the past, I'll be moving through this video pretty quick. We'll be splitting the map into 3 sections: the north end, also referred to as rec, the south end, also known as main, and the basement. Starting with the north end, we'll start at the northernmost point and progress mostly clockwise. You won't be finding much in the lobby, aside from sports bags. In safe room, you can also find sports bags, as well as a jacket, and, of course, a safe. Back in Woodhall, you'll find more scattered sports bags and less often weapon crates. If you didn't already know, Labs has a lot of sports bags. I say they're always worth checking since they have a really diverse loot pool, and Labs tends to have higher quality loot overall. Additionally, any of the small black cube weapon crates will have iskras, good to know for getting food in raid. In the gym, you'll find more sports bags and weapon crates. Moving out toward the center of the room, we have the tech cart, which often spawns various tech items. Next to us, we'll have the lecture hall. I believe it's supposed to spawn intel, but I've never seen it. I would say you don't really need to waste your time checking in here too often. Let's loop back upstairs toward freezer and back hall. Back hall is nothing of significance other than potentially toolboxes and loose tool loot. In kitchen, there's rarely some food and drinks on the shelving of the east wall. Cafe has, you guessed it, more sports bags, as well as a yellow keycard spawn on the thinner tables along the glass. The first of many keycard spawns on the map. Next is our first more loot-dense area over in security room. As you should already know, both violet and red keycard rooms are in here, which have relatively okay loot between valuable spawns and weapon parts, but are by no means worth their respective card prices. I highly suggest just selling the cards if you end up finding either. For the security room itself, on the left as you enter will be shelf units with loose med spawns. To the right, you'll have sports bag spawns, and straight ahead can be large green weapon crates. Toward the back of the room, you have various computers lining the window, and in the far back right corner, a green keycard spawn on the bookshelf. Continuing clockwise, we'll end up at yellow keycard room. It has various valuable spawns inside, but honestly isn't much different from parking switch room. So again, if you find one, I suggest just selling it. In parking switch room, you'll often find high value items on the bench to the left, as well as on the desk. There's also a computer and a set of filing cabinets. Down inside the parking garage itself, there can be a large weapon crate along the left wall, potentially scattered toolboxes, and a high value spawn right next to the rear of the red car. In zigzag hall, between parking and lobby, there should be a grenade box, as well as various weapon crates. Back upstairs, we have admin office, which actually is typically fairly dense with loot. To the left, there are 2 desks, one of which will have a PC, and in the center of the room are a few more desks, most of which will have a PC underneath. On the left wall are 2 shelf units, which have high value spawns. On the floor in front of the couch is another valuable spawn, and the couch itself often has a lootable suitcase. One more valuable spawn is located on the meeting table in the back. Sports bags can also be found throughout the room, so just do a lap around and see if any have spawned in. Under admin and boiler, there's often toolboxes. Lastly, in cat, you have valuable spawns on the meeting table, as well as on the ground to the sides of it next to the cat statues. There's also often a small black weapon crate that'll spawn in. To recap, your best loot locations on the north end are security room, cat, admin, parking switch, the valuable spawn by the red car and parking, and yellow keycard spawn in cafe. Let's move on to the south end of the map, starting with hangar. In the switch room, you'll find a valuable spawn to the right of the desk, PCs under the desk, and a filing cabinet. Outside the room, on the metal platform and to the right, you'll find loose weapon parts. Throughout the rest of the room, you'll primarily find toolboxes and loose industrial spawns. Wrapping around to server office, there'll be a jacket just inside the door, a handful of computers under the desks, a weapon crate, and loose weapon parts on the small table to the right. Server itself is pretty empty, aside from a potential weapon crate spawn and loose weapon parts in the corner of the room under server office. Moving into the south hall, you'll have black room on your right. This is by far the only keycard that I think is worth eventually investing in, as you can easily pull hundreds of thousands, even well over 1 million rubles worth of stims and med items in a single raid. Moving back towards server and up black stairs, we'll end up at green keycard room. It's the biggest locked room on the map and has plenty of valuable and med spawns inside, but you're still better off selling the keycard if you find it. Just outside, you'll have Sanitar's office open with a blue marking keycard. Again, the card itself isn't worth buying unless you're doing the quest that requires you to go in there. Unlike the other cards, it's one-time use and only has a couple stim spawns inside. Continuing down the second floor of the South Hall, you'll end up at the U, which has various stim spawns on the beds and potentially scattered med boxes. Around the corner, you'll have a small closet-type room with potential med spawns and loose industrial loot just outside. There's also a locker room, which tends to have a sports bag and jacket inside. Moving back downstairs, we have Blue Room. I never recommend buying this keycard as it's by far the most worthless of the colored cards. It only has a couple med containers and loose med spawns inside, so you won't be able to make your money back even after an entire wipe of using it. But just outside the room, there are a handful of other loose med spawns where I often find stims. Also, on the desk facing the hallway, there's a green keycard spawn, which I definitely recommend checking every raid. To the east of Blue is a dead-end med room, which has a negligible amount of loose med spawns, so I don't really recommend wasting time getting yourself trapped in there. Moving around the corner toward dark offices, we can start with the billiard office on the first floor. It has the lowest tier loot of all the office, but it's still worth checking out if you have the map to yourself. Inside, you'll mainly find PCs, weapon crates, and filing cabinets. It's worth knowing that just outside the back entrance to the room is a desk where you can often find another grenade case. Great to know if you find yourself running out mid-raid. Next, we can move directly upstairs to Green Dark. Before we enter, you can check the white containers just outside the window for a valuable spawn. Moving inside, you'll have a small shelf on your right with another valuable spawn. Similar to all the other offices, you can find numerous PCs and potentially sports bags and weapon crates. There's a safe on the south wall with a valuable spawn on top, as well as a valuable spawn on the desk right across from it. You can also check the shelves throughout the room for more valuable spawns. Yellow Dark is a similar story. You'll have another safe, multiple PCs, valuable spawns on the shelves, and typically a couple sports bags, as well as a weapon crate. Over in Manager's office, you can check for a green keycard spawn on the reception desk just to the left of the keyboard. In the meeting room, there's a yellow keycard spawn next to one of the laptops. Using your Manager's office key, you can get into the actual office itself, where you'll find a weapon crate, PCs, loose valuable spawns, a safe, and a gun spawn on the desk with the safe. My recommendation is to not push inside here until raiders are taken out, because you'll be aggroed through the glass with very little cover. To recap, your big ticket areas out of these locations are of course the keycard spawns, hangar switch, server office, and pretty much the entirety of dark offices. We can now move downstairs, starting the southwest corner of first floor main with Med Shack. Inside, you can find valuable and med spawns scattered on the tables and floors. Just inside Dome, there are supposedly a few LEDX spawns on top of the various barrels, but I've never seen one myself here. Across from Dome, you'll see a small secluded desk, which has a PC and a small weapon crate spawn. On the desk itself, there's a black keycard spawn. Moving a few steps north, we have a few tables with some important spawns. In the center of the table closer to Dome, there's another black keycard spawn. On the table closer to Managers, there's a yellow keycard spawn toward the center as well. Underneath, there are also a couple PCs. Moving eastward, we'll reach a small covered desk area. There, you can find up to 4 PCs, as well as a valuable spawn on the rack to the left, and another near the book on the desk. Continuing east, you'll hit weapon testing, which is the other key I recommend. Inside, you'll find a table with loose attachments, a weapon rack which spawns various guns, as well as a couple weapon crate spawns. On the floor, next to each of the longer walls, is a valuable spawn. Moving south, you can find a small working area as well as small robot cages. Each of these areas can potentially have toolboxes as well as loose industrial loot. To recap the first floor mid area, you want to make sure you're primarily hitting your keycard spawns, PCs, and valuable spawns. This area is probably the most quickly looted area on the map aside from Black Room, so be prepared to fight to get it all for yourself. Moving on to the basement, there really isn't too much to say. The loot is minimal and isn't really worth wasting your time on in favor of the loot upstairs. But there are a few key things to note. There's quite a few frequent small weapon crate spawns, which are great to know in situations when you're looking for iskras for food. You can find one just next to Woodhall stairs next to the vending machine, just south of main elevator, and by the spawn between the parking spawn and the western metal hall. You can find large weapon crates in a few locations too, notably in the western metal hall and the westernmost point of the north end. In the eastern metal hall, there's a broken broken wooden box that can spawn loose grenades. There's also a few scattered sports bags and toolbox spawns, but none spawn close enough to each other to consider running to a particular location. You can find loose industrial spawns on the wooden spool in the western metal hall, and on the boxes in the middle hall perpendicular to the south hall, and some loose food loot next to the vending machine under wood hall. If you run past any of these basement loot locations, definitely grab some stuff, but I wouldn't necessarily go out of your way to loot the basement. And that's about it for labs loot. It's pretty simple once you get the hang of it. At the end of the day, you can really get away with just sweeping across the upper levels once the map is clear and you're bound to fill your bag. Most importantly, just make sure you're checking all the keycard and loose valuable spawns. As always though, if you have any further questions, feel free to ask in the comments. But thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.
Got a 3.12 KD.